So, it's great schus to be able to join you and Kesha to Shnas Hameo from the Starkos from the Rebbe Nishmas Eden, the Miyasid of Temchut Mimim. In my Bochesh year, and I had the opportunity to have met many of the Talmidei Hatmimim, Reb Nissi, Reb Yisrael Noach, etc. And I want to just share with you a Dover Niflo, which came up this morning before going into the actual shir. And that is that this morning Rabbi Itzinger asked me to give this shir. And fine. Then I picked up a mimer, which was published in the cover by Lahak, starting with the words Refa'eni Havaya Ve'erofei. That's a mimer from Tafshin Chof Aleph. And in the footnote, this is actually, if you don't have it, it's in Chelik Lamed of Teres Menachem. And in the first footnote, it has here Ye'uyan Diba Maskel Zeh, Yeshnas Tarchatz, Kuntras Lamed Vov, Vimayne Kveit Kushas Mushlite Ben Gela Maimer Zeh. On this mimer from Tafshin Chof Aleph, the Rebbe had added a reference to the mimer of this Dibba HaMaschil in Kuntras Lamed Vov. Now, actually, in Chelik Lamed, you can see, let's say, in the beginning of the volume, you have there a Tzilum Ksav Yad Kodesh of the Rebbe, where he actually refers to Kuntras Lamed Vov. Curiously, I opened up Sefer HaMamorim Kuntresim, and I found the mimer for Eini Havaya Ve'erofei, but it's actually in Kuntras Lamed Zayin. So, but the Rebbe had written to look at Kuntras Lamed Vov. Kuntras Lamed Vov is the Kuntras Lekovid Beis Nissen, and the end of Kuntras Lamed Vov has got a whole ariches about the Maila of a Fabrengen. And I'm just going to read, the punchline is actually the very last few words, talking about the Maila of a Chassidische Fabrengen, Huchlat Etzli. I'm not sure the Friedrich Rebbe or the Rebbe Rashab, I think it's Rebbe Rashab. Huchlat Etzli, Asher Hisvadus Achsidim, Hu Mei Chatos Hamatarim. Chassidische Fabrengen is the Mei Chatos Hamatarim, it is water which is purifying. And so I've just found this to be a fascinating Hashgacha Pratis that I was led to while preparing to give a shir on Inyanim of Mikvois, the Keshet to Beis Nissen, and we have here this reference, Chassidische Fabrengen, this is the Mechatas HaMatarim. Okay, what do you have in front of you now, if you're following with my laptop, my PowerPoint? As you see, it was several years ago, I was asked to give a shir about Mikvois in Hamburg. And so, just mamash as an introduction here, second slide. There we are. This is a short letter of the Rebbe Rashab, where he talks about the Verein. There was a society in Hamburg which were helping for mikvahs, and he's asking them for help to build a mikveh, I believe in Menton in France, where the Rebbe was at the time. We'll go on. The third slide, we have here how a Sikha from Tafshin Chavtes and Taf Yutis Kislev, where we have the Alter Rebbe, in Halacha Versteht Mittel Rebbe, we have a Piskedinim, Tzemach Tzedek, there's a Ribui, Rebbe Marash, there are some which lo nitpesu. And then he has Adelach Zeh, the Rebbe Rashab, Befrat Behilchus Mikvois. And then he mentions the Friedrich Rebbe from Father Besgeven Nossi, Shalos Chuvas Benegela Shchita. I'll just digress for a moment for that and come back to our topic. That is the conversation about a shoichet who shaves. And the Friedrich Rebbe, in the late nuns, his he comes to Germany, and there's two shachtim. One is a Yekke who shaved his beard, and one is a chassid who had moved to Germany who shaved his beard. And it's a long tshuva, about 20 pages. Which shchita is preferable, and in Tov Reish Tzadik Beis, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes to the Rebbe to review his tshuva on this. So it's obviously that's what he's referring to about shchita. He means here about a shoichet was shed above. But coming back to our topic, we're talking here about the Rebbe Rashab, and the eine von der Sachen starke Kochzach is in die Yonim von Mikvois. Now we go on to the next slide, and this is a visiting card. Like a businessman has a card, so you can see, if you look carefully, you can see the name Schneerson, and you can, if you read carefully, you'll see, I think it says Lubavitch at the bottom, and it has the Gubernie Mogilev. Is it, sorry? I think that's what it says there. This is Rebbe Rashab's visiting card, and he jotted down here a ha'ora on Hilchas Mikvois, and we'll look through that. And I think it's quite yesodistic for this topic which we're dealing with about Be'er al Gabi Be'er. I want to just add a historical note. My Elter Zeder, his name was Reb Chaim ben Sin Raskin, and he lived in a town called Gzhatsk, and in Tofresh Ayin Dalet. So around then, or Tofresh Ayin Beis, Ayin Dalet, in those years, he has a very big problem. That they had the natural mikveh, which the mikveh they had till then was built on a mayon, which means a natural spring. And then there were modern chevre who were trying to introduce a more modern type of mikveh, and that was a megashomim mikveh. And he saw this as a major concern. So this is 5 years before the Rebbe Rashab comes up with the union of the Be'er al Gabi Be'er. And in this village, they wanted to, the Mechadshim wanted to make a Geshomi mikveh, and he appeals to the Rebbe Rashab for support. And in the Sefer Torah Shalom, the Shalos Tshuvos of the Rebbe Rashab, you have 4 letters, I believe, to the Elter Zeder, and the Rebbe Rashab encourages him not to allow this change, and how it's making a rainwater mikveh is fraught with shilas, and he tells him to try to get support from Reb Chaim Oizer. At any rate, this was the advantage. The preference would be to have a Mayan mikveh. When the Rebbe Rashab moves to Rostov, that's when, once you're in a big town, you can't choose to have a Mayan mikveh wherever you want, or at any rate, then it wasn't so possible. And that's why the Rebbe Rashab goes for the union of a rainwater mikveh, but he tries to make it the best way possible. And so he goes to the preference of a Be'er al Gabi Be'er rather than a Be'er min Hatzad. And I'm going to try to explain these concepts as well as possible. Perhaps we'll go down. Well, first of all, slides 5 and 6 are transcripts of the discussion of the Rebbe Rashab in those tiny notes on the visiting card. And this is taken from Igris Rashab Chelik Vav. Okay, but now let's take a look at slide 7. Slide 7 is a typical rainwater mikveh, and so what we have here is where you can see where the nice tiles, and that's called the Be'er HaTevila. And then we have Beiris min Hatzad. If you can see, there is like on the left side of the picture, there are like two holes on the top, and there's this gray area where there's going to be a collection of rainwater. And there's two basic ways of kashering a mikveh with rainwater. And one is called zriya, and one is called hashaka. Simple hashaka is a simple idea that you've got a reservoir, you've got a tank, which is obviously built in the ground. It's not a tank which is portable, chas v'shalom, that would make it possible. You've got a tank of rainwater, and you have an opening between that tank and the tank, which is where you're toveling, which is just tap water, which is possible. Why is tap water possible? The assumption is, well, there's a concept called mayim she'uvin, water which has been drawn by a bucket, or any keli, that makes that water possible, but it can be kashered by being connected to the mei geshamim. And so we'd have a hole connecting the two bayres, the bayr hatvila and where the mei geshamim is. So long as that hole is the size of what's called shveiferes hanoid, which is about, it's 2 fingers, yeah. So let's say about 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters in American, or about 2 inches. So if that's the diameter of the hole between the beir of mei geshamim and the beir hatvila, that makes it kosher. Typically, that would be near the top of the beir. If you can see the way this mikveh has been built, or the picture drawn with a red line, what is important is that when the mikveh is filled with tap water, it should be filled above this line, so that the water of the beir hatvila should come into contact with the mei geshamim in the beir min hatzad. So that's one method called hashaka. The other method is called zriya. Now, you know the word zriya means to plant, and the idea is to pour tap water into a body which is mei geshamim, which is kosher water. Then it will overflow, and the water which is overflowing, that water would be considered kosher water. So theoretically, you could have a zriya, a beir hazriya could be higher up than the level of the mikveh, and you'll have, it's originally filled with rainwater. Let's say it's got 40 or whatever, a few hundred liters, and the tap water pours into it, and then it overflows and it fills the mikveh. Okay, so these are the two methods of generally of kashering a mikveh. One is called through a beir hazriya, and one is through hashaka. I'm just trying to see what we have over here. Right. The big issue here, I don't know what's the level of yediyas which the Bochrim have. So I apologize for taking a very basic approach. Okay. There is an issue here of no sanso v'not also. Or let's get step one step. Let's step back a minute. When we have a mikveh which is full of a parcel of water, and we have a little window called a hashaka, and shveiferes hanoid. So now the two bodies are connected, and we've said the halacha is that now that mikveh is kosher. What happens if the hole is then blocked? Does the water remain kosher, or does it revert back to being possible? So As you all know, in a men's mikveh, there's usually a rubber stopper, and most of the time that rubber stopper is kept in place, and people don't use it. But if, let's say, you wanted to tovel kalim, so then we would have to remove that stopper, and for noshim tevilas, etc. We would not rely on the hashoka which happened earlier. We would insist that there should be a hashoka whilst the tevilah is taking place. And that's because there's a machlokas harishonim whether the hashoka kasherizes the water totally, or the hashoka only it allows the kashrus of the meig shomim, of the very meig shomim, that kashrus extends to the other water, but it does not kasherize the water be'etzem. So this concept of nifseka ha'hashoka. If nifseka ha'hashoka, does the mikveh remain kosher? And certainly when it comes to tevilas kelim or tevilas doshim, nifseka ha'hashoka would be a consideration to avoid such a shaila. Then we have the concept of nos and sov and not also. I have, let's say, a mikveh which has got 40 so, 60 so of kosher rainwater. I then take a bucket. I understand not everywhere is make shomim in such abundance, yeah? So I want to maintain that it should be hygienic, it should look nice. So what I want to do, I'll take a bucket of water, or clean water, another bucket, and then I'll start taking buckets out. Buckets in and buckets out, and gradually the dirty waters now become clean. But the assumption is also that the original water, for the amount of times I've done it, the original water is no longer going to be there because it's been taken out by the buckets of water each time. So this is the concept of nos and sov and not also. So according to the svara which we said before, that hashoka kasherizes the water, so then nos and sov and not also doesn't seem to be a problem. Because as soon as any possible water comes into the kosher water, it becomes be'etzem kosher, and then relax, this is gewaldig. But if you take the view that nifseka ha'hashoka takes away the kashrus of the water, so by the same svara, nos and sov and not also, by adding water, it doesn't lavdafke, it became be'etzem. So lavdafke became be'etzem kosher. And then so we have this worry of perhaps after a while, there's no longer going to be enough. The original arboim so of kosher meig shomim, and then we have a problem. Okay, so now this is where so let's take minakala lakovet perhaps. Let's go down to slide 13. So here we have an illustration of you can see how you have water coming from the city water supply. It's pouring into the Beir Hazriya, and then it overflows from Beir Hazriya into Beir HaTefillah. You can understand that when you fill up the Beir Hazriya, let's say, has got, 400 liters. The Beir HaTefillah is 1,000 liters, 2,000 liters. Every time you empty that Beir HaTefillah and you put in fresh water, and that's going to run through the Beir Hazriya, that Beir Hazriya has been switched over. The water there has been exchanged about 30 times, just in one filling of the mikveh. And from my own experience, the Beir Hazriyas are usually sparkling clean. For the simple reason that there's no begashmius, there's not a trace of the of the original Meg Shamim over there. That's one aspect. There's another, but Lomizogin, I feel I just onnemen as nos and sova not al so is kosher. Okay. Therefore, the water comes into the Be'azriya, becomes kosher b'etzem, and it overflows. We have another big concern. And that is, as you know, the word mikveh means it has to be stable. It has to be water which has been amassed. It's static. If the water is moving, that is possible. And that's why we've got such a big headache about mikvahs which are leaking, because zechila means crawling, the water which is trickling. The mikveh must not be trickling. It has to be static. So now, this is Be'er Hazriya, which on its own, yes, it's quite waterproof. But as you're pouring water in and the water's pouring out, that means that whole body is zoichalin. That body of water, at least the top of it, is zoichalin. So we have here, in addition to the question of sonos and samnotnoso, using the Be'er Hazriya method, we have here a major concern of zriya b'zoichalin. Because whilst it's zoichalin, it's not a kosher. Now here, someone came up with an idea, someone by the name of Rabbi Ram Yeshaya Karelitz, who lived in Bnei Brak over 50 years ago. And he was actually a strong proponent of doing a Zriya mikveh. And he wasn't worried about it, fine. But he obviously had a problem with Zriya b'zoichalin. So he came up with an idea to have the water supply coming in, not to the top where that water is zoichalin, but it should come to the bottom of the Be'er Hazriya. So that water, where the water is not zoichalin. Which is also, it's very, very questionable, because the poyal is that whole water body is moving b'shas meiser. So therefore it doesn't really solve the problem of zriya b'zoichalin. Here you have slide 15, where we have about toiveling in zoichalin. If you have a body of water, at the upper part, so there are those who say that even if the top is zoichel, the lower part is kosher, then that would solve the problem. But according to some poskim, and the whole thing is you see here, hatoivel lemata mehazchila. If you have a zechila, it's flowing. The upper part is not stable. The lower part is stable. So we've got the two shittas, the Rosh and the Rash, say it's a kosher tevilah. According to the Mordechai, it's a posel tevilah. So then the solution which we had before of bringing that inflow pipe to the bottom of the Be'er Hazriya is going to be still subject to a machlokas harishonim, and so not satisfactory for mikveh. Where we want to be yotze l'chol hadeyas. Right. Let's go down then, where we have here now on slide 18, we have a be'er al gabi be'er. The be'er al gabi be'er, so it has the storage of the rainwaters at the bottom. It's underneath the be'er hatvila. There's an opening of Kishveres Anoid, even bigger, like a 10 centimeters square twice. So there's a connection between the upper and the lower be'er. And in that way, there is a hashoka. And it's not in, perhaps I didn't explain. Let's go back to the standard mikvahs on slide 7. Let's say, forget about Zriya, we just got a Ber HaShaka, or that's what I'm going to be focused on for the moment. Okay, now a person goes into the mikveh and the water level rises, yeah? Because we have a certain mass. So as I go into the mikveh, the water level rises and it goes from, so my tap water, mikveh, overflows into the Be'er Min Hatzad. And I eventually get out of the mikveh, so then the water is going to flow back from the Be'er Min Hatzad back into the Be'er HaTvila. And that happens several times, 10 times, 20 times, 50 times. every time there's a tvila, a person is going to raise the body is going to raise the level of water. It's going to mean mayim shu'uvim, pouring into the Beir Min Hatzad, and then afterwards from the Beir Min Hatzad is going to be pouring into the Meg Shamim. What that means is that never mind a Beir Hazriya, but even a Beir Hashoka, which is a stable body of water by the side of your mikveh, that is also fraught with the problem of nos and sovanot also. Because the usage is going to cause nos and sovanot also. And again, if you hold that nifsika hashoka is kosher, and if you hold that nos and sovanot also is kosher, so it's la mahadrin. But if you're choishish, so that nifsika hashoka is taiganisht, and which is a chumrah which many poskim take. And certainly, if you're going to be choishish for nos and sovanot also, so then we have a big concern here with the Beir Min Hatzad. Now let's go down then to the Beir al Gabe Beir, slide 18, where you have now hashoka, not from the side, but from the underneath. What that means is that when you go in, when you go out, it's not going to affect at all the amount of Meg Shomim. So it's not going to, you're not going to push any tap water into the Beir HaTachten, because the Beir HaTachten is full till the brim, and on top of it you got your Meg Shamim, and so you're all good. So that's really the genius of doing a Beir al Gabe Beir rather than Beir Min Hatzad, that it allows there should be a hashoka in a way that there should not be should be a minimal chashash of nos and sovnot also. Okay. Now, I don't know how much time I have, but let's take another nakuda here. The Rebbe Rashab, we know that he was the whole mikveh Beir al Gabe Beir in Rostov was in his B'chaim Chiyusa Be'al Modeim was not more than about 2 years. And during this time, he was, we know that he had a barometer on his desk, and he was constantly concerned, is there going to be rain? There was a oitzer, which can be seen apparently today. In the Chotze in Rostov, there's an oitzer. What that means is that there is a reservoir of rainwater, which means that if for some reason there's not enough rainwater, you have a side supply, and you can pull away a plug, and then, however, it's not going to the lumbus of how to do it in a kosher way. If you don't know how to do it, don't do it. But they had an oitzim in the side to be able to replenish the rainwater. Why was it important for the Rebbe Rashab to replenish the rainwater supply? So I mentioned before the concept of zriya. Zriya means, which is mentioned in the Mishnah, and zriya means that you pour possible water into a body of kosher water and it becomes kosher. Rebbe Rashab wanted that not only should this mikveh be kosher through the method called hashoka, it should also be kosher through the method of zriya. So it's all very well. There's a hashoka window which connects the upper and the lower bodies of water. That's a hashoka. But there are some apprehensions whether hashoka alone is enough to kasher. Zriya is in some ways clearer, and what we mean in a zriya, in a body which is not running anywhere, in a zriya, in a kosher body of water, so then if possible water falls into it, it will become kosher for tabling. So what the Rebbe Rashab instructed, apparently, that whenever they would empty this mikveh, not talking about the lower one, I'm talking about the Beir HaTvila, whenever that would be emptied, and it's very important that the mikveh has to be maintained in top hygiene, very, very clean. So it would mean washing the walls, it would mean, and then removing the shmutzike water, the dirty water. Now, so then, how are you going to get zriya happening? when you pour in fresh water from the city water supply, is going to turn into empty pool. You'll do hashoka, that's not a problem. You won't have the mile of zriya. What the Rebbe Rashab wanted is that every time they would empty the mikveh, before refilling, to pull that plug on the oitzer and to allow a couple of inches of kosher rainwater, and that would fill the bottom couple of inches of the Beir HaTvila. Once that is done, the plug can be put back again, and now we've got a body of mayim ksherim, and then you open the water supply of the city water supply. That water is now pouring into kosher water. So there would be a zriya as you'd start refilling. So again, so the seder of maintaining this mikveh, every time you clean it, you empty it out, you make it clean, allow a couple of inches of meg shomim, of kosher meg shomim, above the floor. So that's besides the meg shomim in the bottom, there's now a bit of meg shomim above the floor. Then once that is in place, then you can open the tap and allow city water to pour in, and that's going to fall into the meg shomim, and it will be zriya. So that mikveh will have the milo of zriya as well as the mile of hashak. And that is my understanding why the Rebbe Rashab was so concerned that there should be continually a supply of rainwater in the oitzer, so that you should be able to, every time when you refill the mikveh, and the Rebbe Rashab was very concerned that it should be hygienic for Pasha to be, so shouldn't turn off people from using mikveh, and so that was his cheshbon. Now, our Rebbe came up with an alternative idea to this, and that is bearing in mind that having a supply of rainwater to be able to replenish every time and to do this whole shtick which I just described, possibly is not always, the supply of rainwater may not be so adequate, and also it's perhaps a bit more maintenance heavy. It's high maintenance, and if you don't know what you're doing, this whole business about pulling the plug, and you have to know what you're doing, because you don't want to have a habiyosei ayudei shalei ayudei tara. It's quite a complicated aspect of mikveh. So the Rebbe came up with a different idea, and the Rebbe says to make that the mei ha'ir, the posel of water, if that can be directed, that it should fall directly into the aperture, into the window, which between the upper and the lower bayris. In this way, that as the water lands, it's going to be becoming a zriya. So that's the first couple of inches, and then it continues pouring in, and so that's the Rebbe's alternative to the Rebbe Rashab's way of having a continual supply of rainwater. The Rebbe's idea was that you can use the Beir HaTachton as your supply of rainwater, and you have your Meir falling directly into it. I know some people, some Rabbonim have been quite concerned about that, but because if so, we are undermining the union of Nos and Sov and Not also, because you're pouring posel water into the thing. The kasha is an interessant kasha. What's also what becomes also an issue with if this method is used, if we have a mikveh which is made with a filter, and so the way it works is that the filter is pumping water out and pouring water back in. So that filter is making the water zeichelin. And so we have here a problem that if you want to say you want to do zriya in the most kosher way, but if it's zriya b'zeichelin, so to do this method with a filter, we are missing out on the hidur of zriya b'zeichelin. Those who have filters are obviously making the decision that the importance of having a filter, the people are using their mikveh, and they don't want to chas v'shalom turn off someone. So that is a greater hidur than the concern of zriya b'zoichalin, which you can find certain ways around it, etc. Let's perhaps, how are we doing for time? Okay, let's go through the. Let's look at point slide number 8. Mikveh sheyesh. This is a quote from Shulchan Aruch. Mikveh sheyesh be'arboim so amayin kol shehu. Yochel lishoiv kol ma sheyutze litel latoicha v'hem ksherim. You can. I'll call you back later. So, and he says here the Shulchan Aruch is saying basically you can top up as much as you want to kosher a mikveh, and that all becomes kosher. So here we have the shach. It says if you filled up a mikveh and it overflowed, so that's also okay. Ad kan labein ruchim al mashma de yesh oisrim. There are those who say that if you filled a mikveh with kosher water, but then it overflowed, that water which overflowed does not have the kashrus of the mikveh. So again, you have a kosher mikveh, you poured in X amount of gallons of posel water. Whilst they are inside, no question, that's all kosher. But once that overflows to the next one, yesh oisrim. And it's interesting because the Chassam Sofer built him. This is the Chassam Sofer mikveh is having two mikvahs next to one another, filling one, overflowing to the other, and then the second one becomes kosher. Then you empty the first one, then you overflow the second one back to the first one, and that was the Chassam Sofer's way of a kosher mikveh. But we have here the shach brings yesh oisrim. So yeah, here we have a similar idea where we have in Sifnun base, we have here that once there has been a contact, it becomes kosher, but then the shach here again brings Rabbein Yeruchim that we have a suffix whether it becomes kosher or be'etzem, or once the hole is stopped, it goes back to become posel. And again, he writes for Tevla Hachmir Chatchila. But then the person who's lent a bisel mishnayis will zog a mefurish mishnah, and so this is where the Rebbe Rashab addresses this in his little business card. All right, so I'm going to read this mishnah. We've got two mikvos, and one is kosher, one is posel, and you can connect them and make one kosher from the other. So one is to bring a pipe and mevi siloin shel cheres shel ova maniach yodei tachtov ad shehu mismale mayim. You put water. How do you say? You block the opening of the pipe, and then you pull up the pipe. It's like a siphon almost, and then you'll connect it to the other one, and that's kosher. Now, then we have the following: Hoyo bi'elyoin arboim so. The upper mikveh has got 40 so. B'tachtun ein klum, and the lower one is empty. Mamale b'kosef. You're going to bring a bucket and another bucket, and you'll pour into the upper one. So here you see clearly that the overflow of a mikveh to the other one is a kosher. Is kosher. So what's this business of Rabbein Yeruchim bringing a svara that yesh machmirim, that the overflow doesn't become kosher be'etzim? It's a mefurish mishnah, the mala bekosif, and it fills the lower one, and we're all good. This is the way the Rebbe Rashab talks about this mishnah. So I'm looking at slide 11 to say that the second part of Mishnah means that the two are going to remain connected. Ishver as it's learning. And the question is, how do you deal with according to the Svara, that nifsika ha'ashaka becomes possible. So how can the Mishnah say that the overflow is kosher? The Rebbe Rashab's chidush, I'm going back to that slide, is it said hoya be'elyon arboim so. It doesn't say hoya be'elyon meyo so. It's hoya be'elyon arboim so. And the tachton is also contains 40 so, but for the moment it's empty. When you, well, let's take the liberty of saying hoya be'elyon arboim so umashahu. You now pour possible water into the elyon, and now it overflows to the point that now there's arboim so in the lower one and arboim so in the upper one. We're going to take the assumption that 50% stayed and 50% overflowed, which means that of these two bairis, which before they had just over 40 sa'ah of kosher water, now there's just now some 80 sa'ah between the two. We're going to say that the upper one has still got just over 20 sa'ah, rubai kosher, and the lower one has also got rubai kosher. It's got also just over 20 sa'ah of kosher water. That's what's happened over here. And so the hechsher, which is set lo mir sagen, amenem nicht on, das Svara von lo mir sagen, we follow that nosen so v'notel so is possible berubai. This Mishnah is nicht kiraya lahachsher, because this Mishnah is talking about exactly arboim so efsha mashahu merer, but it remains that both the tachton and the elyon will have just over estim so. And therefore, nos and so, even the Machmirim is talking about nos and so is up till Rubai. It's still kosher. So here's a situation where it's Rubai, and the Elyon and the Tach, the Rubai is buying Ksherim. But if you're going to start doing the same shtick with with large amounts, much more than Arboim so, when you're not going to have Roiv kosher, neither in the Tach, neither in the Elyon, so then this Mishnah is nishkiraya to kasher the Indian of nos and sov and not also. That's as far as I remember. I mean, I didn't look it over properly today. That's be'erech Rebbe Rashab's mahalach why this Mishnah is nishkiraya, and I just want to perhaps share with you an interessant mahalach. I think in derech hapsak, there's one way of saying we are going to shittif the minish chayshish. Finished. Or we're going to say, it's such a shitta, we will be choishish for it as much as we can. And it comes to the hidurim for Pesach. So people ask, what's the logic? Well, you use kedem wine, why don't you use kedem apple juice? And it's not a perfect science. We'll be machmir as much as we can, and that which we can't. So philosophers come up with the Mebishten. And when it comes to Psak Halacha also, there could be an approach, which I mentioned before, one of the contemporary or relatively recent poskim, says, nos and some not also, minish choishish to them. And so the lechatchila don't worry about it. And then you've got the Chassidish approach, where you say, listen, ich hab taka kashis, but there is such a shit, the shittas arrived, nos and some not also, is nish beseder. Although Taki he's a das yochid, kaponim, the Rambam also holds not so is possible, but he's a psul derabbanon. At any rate, but there's a whole body there of Rishonim who are concerned about nos and so and of nifsika ha'ashaka, and therefore, if we can accommodate and to be machmir like that shitta, we're going to do so. And that's, I believe, the background to the Chassidish Shita of trying to be careful. Yotzei dem Shita, al tzad ha'yoseh tov, da mafsik sein, and wish you all a good chodesh,